Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Baithak podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be reviewing the Qatar GP. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant. The championship just keeps getting better. Definitely a very exciting weekend in Qatar and a lot more racing than we were expecting originally. But yeah, it just keeps going one way and the other for the entirety of this season, and hopefully we'll have an exciting season finale in 3 weeks' time. But how was your weekend, and what did you think about the race?
Well, with Fernando Alonso's podium, my weekend could not have been any better, right? I mean, I was watching half the race in the car while coming back from somewhere, and while watching on the phone, I started to have a bit of a headache. But as I got home, switched on the TV, and when I realized that Alonso has a real chance at getting that podium, that headache just went away like that. And I mean, it is incredible. As a fan, just all the hardships of the McLaren days and the sabbatical and everything like that. I think it was a pretty exciting day for me.
I
Regardless
mean,
of whatever happened in the championship, in the in the order, that Alonso podium was the highlight of the day.
yeah, obviously, I mean, I bet it was a great weekend for you, and we'll talk about Fernando Alonso and his win a lot more. The last time I think he was on the podium was in Hungary in 2014,
2014, yeah.
which like we were told multiple times throughout the course of the race today. But
Yeah.
regardless, obviously this weekend started with a lot of controversy, but it ends a little bit less controversial, though, a lot more quieter from all the teams. But let's start at the very beginning on Thursday. Uh, During the press conference, that was spicy from the FIA. I don't know if it was, Michael Massey being, a little bit cheeky, or it was just, a coincidence, but seems unlikely, that as soon as Toto and Wolf get into a press conference, the FIA and the stewards make their decision and decline Mercedes' right to review for the Hamilton Verstappen incident in Brazil. Uh, but yeah, what did you think about that? Clearly, Toto said that his aim was to, the goal he wanted to accomplish with the appeal was to create a discussion around this issue. However, let's say after Friday, we haven't really heard anything about it. It's not been the chat of the paddock. There's been so much going on that this issue has almost been swept under the rug after Friday FP2 almost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once the decision was out and the drivers, had their different press obligations, I think that was like the first time they spoke to the press after that decision. They all voiced their concerns and everything like that. That such such action should not go unnoticed and whatever. But as you said, after Friday, in fact, yeah. Uh, there has not been any talk of that, and even today we did not see any moves like that. Even though there was some hard racing, but there was nothing too extreme, and that conversation never got going again. But
Yeah,
but
definitely things were
I
a lot.
think yeah, I think the general consensus of the drivers, that bunch is that the ultimate decision of the FIA to not review that incident altogether was bad, and I think it sets an unfortunate precedent. Then,
Yeah,
for
let's
the
let's talk about that now. Before we get into it, right? Obviously things were respectable this weekend, which is why we didn't see this issue come up multiple times throughout the course of Sunday at least. But the stewards did say that this particular decision may lead to a regulation change, like a rule book regulation change, such that the teams will not be allowed to appeal for a review of an incident if it was not investigated in the first place. Also, in last week's podcast, I was wrong to assume that the stewards had all the data while deciding to investigate the same incident during the Brazilian GP, as you pointed out. My impression was, although they said the same thing that the data was not significant, whatever Mercedes presented them with, like the front onboard
Yeah.
camera. But regardless, they didn't have that at that particular point. Now, yeah, let's talk about the implications of this decision on on the way like the teams go racing, and also on the way the drivers approach racing, which is something that all the drivers talked about during the pre-race interviews that they had across the entire weekend. And I think there has been no clarity from the stewards in regards to racing expectations either during the driver briefing, which is baffling for a lot of drivers. And I think everybody is in a bit of a gray area and they don't know what to think. But obviously, this gray area comes from the fact that Max. I think you know Max really pushed the limits, and we agreed on the fact that Max, in our opinion, should have been penalized for this,
Yep.
since the only reason Max should not have been penalized is if he pushed Lewis wide, but he himself made the corner. That is the time when you could have agreed or disagreed or have been on the fence about the fact that it was okay for the stewards to not penalize Max. But yeah, let's talk about the implications with that. What do you think? How is it gonna change the way these two or the rest of the field goes racing over the next couple of races? And do you think we're gonna get some clarity going racing next year?
Well, like firstly, from the comments of the FIA, and from the repeated criticism that they have received over the course of the season, not only for this incident, I think they have you know come to a sensible point and realize that okay, these gray areas need to go away. These inconsistencies in the decisions need to go away. So, like, obviously, hopefully, that the racing spirit and the not the spirit, but the racing incident part of things remains, so that we don't have everything black and white. But then again, we need, from the steward's point of view at least, we need some concrete steps to be taken. But I think from the driver's point of view, Charles Leclerc and I think even Lando Norris said, and they just said that if going around the outside and being pushed off is not punished, no one is going to go around the outside anymore. And
I
the
mean, that is
those
true.
moves won't, those risks won't be taken anymore. So
But that begs the question that I mean, obviously we've seen and we discussed this on the last podcast, and it was the fact that if you're making a move on the around the outside, the only time the driver on the inside will get punished is if he pushes you onto gravel,
yeah,
or something that puts you
damages
at a
you. Yeah.
disadvantage compared to him, right? But if it's on asphalt, it's not gonna happen. But is this just now? Obviously, all of this conversation regarding the racing rules and expectations started back in Austria this year, at least. But is this just the stewards who are obviously who are people who have raced previously and have been a part of the organization for ages, who've seen racing in and out throughout the years? Is it their way of pushing racing to like an old school style where overtaking on the outside was not common and it was just only like ballsy moves and respectable racing that made it happen? Because we saw in Austria too, right? And we had this debate where we saw Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, and Charles Leclerc have their incidents where they pushed each other wide, whereas then we saw Fernando Alonso, Daniel Ricciardo, George Russell, all of these guys race on the same track and not have any incidents, keep it respectable, and still make the overtakes and uh, go racing in a very respectable manner, without damaging each other or causing any harm as such, or and n- no one tried to make a move on the outside. The driver on the outside would get on his brakes and get onto the racing line, or tuck in behind the driver on the inside line and giving the racing line and things like that. So that just begs the question, in my opinion: are the stewards trying to push the drivers towards an old school racing style where it's the move on the inside that counts?
I mean, I don't really think so. It's an interesting thought that not just the thought, but the fact that the steward decisions can in fact influence the way they race, basically. So that's an interesting aspect altogether. But I don't think they are trying to do that. I just uh, it would be very strange and very difficult to do that in a way. But I think because as racing drivers now we don't know what they go through, but what we have heard and saw, whenever there's a gap and whenever there is a place to go, they go and they make that overtake. So even if they make those rules about on the outside and everything like that, people will still make those overtakes and make those attempts. So I don't think it's that effort to influence them in any manner. But yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they're active. Yeah, maybe they're not actively trying to influence them, but it just seems that the decisions that are being made by the stewards are pushing. The decisions that are being made by the stewards is pushing the drivers towards such a racing style for the future. Even if they're not actively trying to do so. But yeah, regardless, like you
yeah.
said,
I mean,
it's
I
an
get I
interesting.
get what you're saying, but yeah, it's a it's a quite an interesting topic.
Yeah, absolutely. But the weekend also started with a little more controversy other than just that because Red Bull were ready to appeal the legality of Mercedes' rear wing, but I think they were waiting and haven't appealed it yet. Which they might do again. Which they might do in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi because they're waiting. Because I think the FIA were like testing out wings themselves. Proactively testing out
Yeah.
wings over the weekend for I
Yes.
think every team almost, which is why they didn't appeal it. And obviously, if the Mercedes was not penalized over the weekend, which means even if their wing is not legal in the spirit of racing, like Mercedes said, Red Bull's wing was not earlier in the year.
Yeah.
It definitely passes the technical tests
Yeah.
that FIA have laid down. So 1 point for Mercedes. But interestingly, Red Bull did share one image of fretting by the Mercedes rear wing main plane with the Sky Sports team. I think on the broadcast on Friday. I think when Christian was doing his interview. So that was really interesting to see that one still image. But the sudden Mercedes pace advantage does beg the question: where is this speed coming from? And if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd say Mercedes are doing something illegal late into the season, so that there isn't enough time for the competitors to discover how they are generating this advantage. But I'm just enjoying the racing, so this never came from me. I'm not a Max fan. Vedant said he
Yeah.
wanted Max to win, so
No, but I mean, it's it's exciting, and it just shows you how hard these guys race, because earlier in the season, Red Bull were way ahead of Mercedes, and only because of Max's DNFs were Mercedes in the ballpark of the championship, and that sort of, yeah. But to fight back and to and even given the engine issues that they have been having supposedly, it's been an incredible comeback from Mercedes, and that just shows you why they have been winning the championship for so many years now.
so on average they were not on average, let's say, but like in quali at least they were like 2 tenths down on Red Bull, right? After the summer break for the next few races. Maybe not in Monza, but Monza and Silverstone. But after the summer break, there were quite a few races where they weren't as quick. So let's say even if they were about a tenth off on pace in quali, and now they are half a second quicker.
Yeah.
They made up 6 tenths. That's the amount of development that happens across the season in terms of pace advantage, and they did it over maybe like 3 races. So who knows? But the same could be said about Alpine this weekend, and they just came out of nowhere to take third and fifth, I think, which is crazy in itself. Where did that pace even come from for Alpine? But who knows? Who knows? Definitely interesting. Let's get into the weekend. I can see you. I can see you wanting to just dive into Fernando Alonso. So we'll make our way there. But yeah,
Uh,
Valtteri Bottas can't catch a break again, but you have to give it to him, right? He did everything he could. He had a great weekend, in my opinion. But unlucky with that 3 plays grid penalty, but after like a bad start, I think he made up as much as he could, and he was in a prime position to compete for third place. But once again, it's Valtteri Bottas who suffers a tire failure and can't make it to the finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when with that bad start, Valtteri stuck in 11th, and I feared the worst. I feared that okay, Valtteri is stuck in the midfield, and he'll struggle. He'll struggle very very bad to climb up the order. But he did pretty good, and I mean that one stopper would have worked wonders for him and given him the podium. But yeah, it, maybe just one extra lap that they did on those tires.
I mean, Pirelli did say, so I think Valtteri Bottas, it was on his 33rd lap
Third,
on
yeah,
those tires when he had a puncture. And I think Pirelli did say in their, I guess, guide, that the tires should only last, 30 laps. And anything beyond that is not guaranteed by them. So I think Mercedes were pushing the limits of that tire. And, coming into the weekend, they had expected a lot of, like going into the race, we were all expecting a two-stop race from everyone almost.
yeah,
But they were definitely pushing the limits. So it's not surprising that that happened. And Valtteri Bottas was not the only one. We saw George Russell, Nicholas Latifi, and Lando Norris lost out on a what could have been a P4 or a P5 because he also had a puncture. But thankfully, the McLaren team identified that puncture before the tire completely failed. So that was great on their behalf. And then we also saw Pierre Gasly earlier on Saturday during qualifying, have his puncture, but that was because of his front wing getting trapped or something like that, and also going over the bigger curbs,
curbs, yeah.
uh, you know. So all of that just making it worse for the tire. But guess what this gave us? A Valtteri Bottas DNF. What did that give us, Vedant? A swing in the constructors championship,
Yeah,
since you didn't want to answer.
absolutely.
Merck is only 5 points ahead of Red Bull now instead of being 10 points ahead. So that's one for Red Bull, and just it just seems it keeps swinging, like I keep saying. But I think a lot of Max fans were happy on Friday because Lewis had a engine problem. However, I think Lewis was using an old engine for this weekend, so he's still going to be faster than what he was this weekend in Saudi and Abu Dhabi. So Max fans, you have a lot to vouch for. Keep your eyes peeled because Lewis is just going to get faster the way he's going. But you got to give it to him, Pressure's on Lewis, and he's delivering two back-to-back race wins now. I think there's a stat last weekend that came out, and it said, Lewis has never won a championship uh, if he hasn't been leading with like 6 races remaining. So I think that does not speak to the fact that Lewis can't win a championship from here. That just speaks to the fact that how fast Lewis wraps up a championship,
Yeah,
if anything.
yeah. I mean the number of stats and facts that have been going around over the past few months
Yeah, like the
is
other stat was like every driver who's had pole position at a new circuit has ended up winning that championship for
championship.
that
Yeah,
calendar year. And yeah, Lewis did again in Losail, so he's the favorite for the championship by that stat.
yeah, exactly. So I mean it's interesting to see all these things, all these stuff, and interesting to make theories, but yeah, it's just not true every single time.
Absolutely, and not a lot to talk about. Lewis and Mercedes really. I think they delivered what was expected of them, and nothing less, nothing more there. But more off-track drama will continue between the two team principals. I think one of the popular questions this weekend in the Toto Christian press conference was, has this political fight gone a bit too far? And I think they got asked that like a couple times in different ways by the reporters, and they said no, it's a part of Formula One and they're enjoying it. And we all know Christian loves a good cat fight, if you want to put it that way. Because we also saw him, mouth off against the stewards after Max was penalized for not respecting the double waved yellows. So we'll see. Not a lot of love for Christian in the community, but he keeps things interesting, so that's great.
Absolutely, Christian Horner. I mean, he loves a fight, and I think he just he whatever his comments were, I don't remember them, but I think he just said that we respect each other, but we don't need to butter each other up or something like that, and it's
Yeah,
racing.
he said I don't feel the need to kiss
Take him
Toto's
out to
ass,
dinner
unlike
or something. Yeah,
yeah, something like that.
yeah. So I
But
mean,
yeah, regardless.
that's the truth, right? all these drivers and all these competitors do respect each other very much, because they know what the other is doing, right?
Yeah.
And then
Uh,
again, the fact that they are so competitive makes them so intense rivals.
Absolutely, and F1 is not family friendly anymore on a Sunday afternoon. Uh,
Yeah.
but but yeah, let's talk about Red Bull. Still not quite there on pace. They'll definitely have to do something. I don't think Christian protesting in public is gonna help anymore. Sebastian, just the way Sebastian Vettel used to protest or call for blue flags. Christian Horner's call for Mercedes penalty is now gonna help, like we saw in Brazil. Mercedes right now is unstoppable on pace, but Perez. I mean, the only thing he would have done is get into Q3 and finish P3.
Yeah.
There's nothing more that he could have done. So he was almost there, but he still doesn't look very comfortable in that car for sure. Knocked out in Q2 this time. What was going on there? And on softs, it was not. He was not even on the medium tires.
Yeah. That was a surprising part. I mean, I don't know. I have no words. It's just so unfortunate, and because
It's
we have
it's
seen he has been performing pretty well over the past few weekends. He has been P3.
debatable, but
I mean,
yeah, the
he has
results
been
might
P.
say
Yeah, he has
might
been
say
P3,
yeah.
right? So, but then again, it's I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it's almost like if, like Valtteri Bottas has had a roller coaster, season. So similarly, we see Perez's season like that, but it just
Yeah.
swings depends on like what Valtteri is doing instead of what Perez is doing. because Perez has been consistent in a weird way. Like when he's bad, he's like continuously bad. When
Yeah.
he's been decent, like the last few weekends, he's been pretty good. But Valtteri also has a lot of say in it. I feel. Depending on how and where Valtteri finishes, the point swing goes one way or the other, clearly, and it does not really It doesn't really get affected by Perez's, place
Yeah.
during a race. But I guess the biggest question this weekend was, could Max Verstappen have challenged without that grid drop? And that grid drop was also controversial, right, Vedant? Because apparently there was not enough information for Max to slow down. Yes, there were double waved yellows on one side, then there was the green pit lane light on the other side, but there was no information on Max's dash or any communication for the team for him to slow down. But I guess it's a team sport, so Max had to take one for the team this time. But what do you think? Could he have challenged without the grid drop, and was the penalty fair? I guess.
I mean, the penalty was sort of fair because he ignored yellow flags, double waved yellows, and that was a penalty for it. But I think he could have tried with had he started on the front row. Mercedes, the pace Lewis Hamilton had was way greater than Max Verstappen had. So probably the some pit strategy, undercutting, overcutting, and whatever could have helped him. But then again, I think Lewis Hamilton was just that bit faster this weekend as well.
I think Max was also carrying some wing damage, like end plate front wing damage, or like damage on the front wings end plate after like the first few laps. So I think that is also why he couldn't really push Hamilton to go faster or influence Mercedes' tire strategy in any way really. That might somehow put things in Red Bull's hands. So obviously that didn't happen. Why does it feel like there's not a lot to talk about, even though I'm so excited about this, championship? And even though it was such a great weekend, there's just not a lot to talk about, except Fernando Alonso. We'll come to Fernando. Don't worry about it. We'll
No,
come to
no,
him.
no.
We'll come
I
to
mean,
him. It's okay.
see,
But
neither of the Red Bulls and neither of the Mercedes had a real head-to-head, wheel-to-wheel action this weekend.
yeah, so we'll talk about Fernando. It's okay.
No, I don't. I'm not too excited about
But
that.
let's
Anyway.
let's talk about Ferrari next. Obviously, because Norris had that tire failure, Ferrari still came out on top. Unfortunately, it seemed like Norris could have swung 5 to 10 points in favor of the McLaren, and catch up a little bit to the Ferraris. But that did not happen after his puncture during the latter half of the race. But we really saw Leclerc, struggling for pace on Saturday, and we found out that Leclerc wasn't slow. compared to Carlos. There was a lot of chat about that too on Twitter. Leclerc had a crack in his chassis, so
Yeah.
please. But it definitely, like, this weekend definitely messed up my fantasy league, so I'm a little upset about that right now. But yeah, but he still finished next, just next to Carlos Sainz, one position down from him. But I think Ferrari did mess up Carlos's strategy.
Yeah, Carlos Sainz he started P5, and Gasly, who started ahead of him, had a bad strategy and went behind. So yeah, I think he should have finished P5 even after Sergio Perez would have overtaken him. That was that
Yeah,
was the
I mean,
expected position, right?
Esteban Ocon came from behind to
Yeah,
finish ahead of Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc was also behind. I think Charles Leclerc was just ahead of Esteban Ocon maybe, and then he finished right behind Sainz. So that goes to show that Ferrari were not really thinking about Sainz throughout the race. And I think we know where this conversation is going, but strategy Seb is gone, so we can't do anything about that. But they still lead McLaren by 39.5 points in the Constructors' Championship, obviously extending their lead by, I think, 4 points today, or something like that. A few
more
a
than
few
4 points.
points
Yeah.
today. In my opinion, Ferrari have definitely sealed P3. There's nothing like, even a double DNF is not gonna turn things wildly around. Maybe Lando gets a couple P3 finishes even. But even then, it's like 30 points, and I don't see
Yeah,
Danny
I
Rick,
mean,
getting a lot of points the way he's been performing lately.
yeah, 40 points is a huge margin to turn around, even when you're fighting at the top of the championship. So when you're fighting for 5-7 points, it's a big one.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have been saying that is this McLaren, trying to throw away P3 so that they can get more development time, because they might need more development time. But it's unlikely that the teams will do that, because I'm pretty sure they'd rather have more money than 40 extra hours of development time over the course of a year.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
just in my opinion.
absolutely.
And
And
wait
I
on,
mean, even other than the money, the prestige that comes with it.
exactly, yeah, exactly. And now we can finally talk about Fernando Alonso. Oh my God. I mean, I have to literally eat my words from our season preview, because, like I've said many times, I thought that Esteban Ocon will comprehensively beat Fernando Alonso over the course of the season. But if anything, we are getting further and further away from that particular statement. But I have to give it to Fernando Alonso. 40, 42. But what a drive! I think we always talk about Sergio Perez is the best at tire management of the grid and maintaining his pace. I think Fernando Alonso might give him a run for the money.
Absolutely. I mean, when those punches started happening in the last 10 laps, I was on the edge of my seat. I was too
I
anxious
was
to.
actually praying for a tire failure for Fernando Alonso because of my fantasy team. Not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
But I mean, I was too anxious to watch the race even, right? But and
What is gonna happen to you, Vedant, when you go to the season finale with both Max and Lewis on equal points? Are you gonna be able to watch that race, or are you gonna just watch highlights the next
no,
day?
see, I'll watch Max and Lewis because I'm not,
You're not invested.
a real fan in that way, right? But yeah, with Fernando,
Such a
it's
dad answer.
well. Anyway, it was a brilliant drive, and not just on Sunday, even on Saturday, to put it P5 in that Alpine is,
Yeah.
I mean,
Where did Alpine get that pace from? Like, okay, Lando Norris had some pace and he put it up there, but the Ferraris didn't really have pace. Obviously, Charles Leclerc was struggling, but Carlos wasn't showing a lot of promise. He qualified P6, I think, P7, something like that. And,
yeah,
you
P7.
know, but both the Alpines were just blitzing everyone. And then, obviously, AlphaTauri was up there too, but the Alpines really surprised me this weekend. Like, they haven't been anywhere. They haven't been in the top 10 regularly. And now
Yeah,
this weekend they're up there in the top 5. And even Esteban Ocon had a great weekend.
yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know where that came from.
Did
Maybe
Alpine or Renault finally come up with an engine upgrade that no one is talking about? That's unlikely, but
that's unlikely. But yeah, I mean, it may be a a setup thing or a circuit characteristic thing, but yeah, a good weekend for them. And towards the end of the season, they are now 25 points ahead of AlphaTauri. So that
yeah, and
is
that is
that is
definitely the
huge.
most
That is
important
huge.
part. That is huge with only 2 races to go, and it's two drivers competing against one basically on points at least, because
Yeah,
Yuki Tsunoda has had a really bad run of races off late, even though he has had shown good pace, but he's just had bad luck, and it didn't work out for him. AlphaTauri was just not on the right strategy. Um, Compromising Gasly's brilliant P4 or P2 on the grid, I guess.
yeah.
Starting P2, and I don't know how Gasly finished P11 or P12 after that. Just don't understand how that happens without a tire puncture or an emergency pit stop or any kind of failure. Like it's just hard to comprehend. It's like a Ferrari thing almost. But really compromising not only Gasly's weekend, but really compromising my fantasy team, which is why I'm even more upset with AlphaTauri this weekend. I finally put Pierre Gasly as my turbo driver for the very first time. I'm like, this man is gonna be the shining light of my fantasy team this weekend. And then AlphaTauri is like, nah, it's all right. Maybe next time. So yeah, really disappointing there. But Aston Martin, double points. Finally some points from Lance Stroll, who's had an even more disappointing second half of the season compared to last year.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Seb Vettel. I think Seb Vettel has had a great run of races off late. He hasn't scored a lot of points, but he's shown some really consistent pace, and I think that's great news for Aston Martin for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, given the position Aston Martin are in, I think even securing P10 and P9 for 3-4 consecutive races is good enough, and I think Seb has been doing that. Maybe P11 and 12 as well, but yeah, he has been there and thereabouts to secure those small little points whenever someone up the order does not.
Yeah, and that's definitely better than a one-off P2 or a P3 finish
Yeah,
from
absolutely,
Seb across the season. So
absolutely.
yeah, that's definitely better. Williams had a double disaster today. Both, they were obviously not running the points, so it didn't affect them much. But still, just sucks. Double disaster for them with the tires. There's obviously going to be a investigation at Pirelli to understand what happened, and I'll be interested to know the results of that particular investigation. But I think from what we saw is like everybody suffered like delamination, and it eventually the tire just punctured. But I'm not sure if both the Williams cars had pushed past the lap limit that Pirelli had recommended to the teams. Do you have any idea about that?
No, I think they did stop quite early because they were probably on a two-stop strategy initially, because they did stop quite early, and they didn't stop in the Fernando Alonso window basically. But so probably they did push across, but they were on the hards, I believe.
I
So
mean, the hards were also only rated for 40 laps, I think,
yeah,
according to Pirelli. So it wasn't like a lot more. But
yeah,
but at the same time, I want to point out it's very surprising. People like Fernando Alonso, obviously, and Lando Norris. This started on the softs, and that lasted
yeah,
as long as the
yeah,
mediums, which is surprising. When you think about it, that the softer tire does not last as long, and but the reliability characteristics might be similar for a medium and a soft tire compared to performance characteristics, and we might not know that. So maybe that is something we can look into once we are done with this particular podcast. But Alfa Romeo once again, with each other, just like the two Ferraris, finishing P14 and P15. Big news coming early last week, was that Gauni Joe finally replaced Antonio. Will be replacing Antonio Giovinazzi in that Alfa Romeo seat next year. We've talked about it a little bit. We've briefly on and off. But what are your thoughts now that you actually know that Guan Yu Zhou will be racing and that Oscar Piastri will be a reserve driver for Alpine and won't be racing full time in any series next year,
yeah.
or a development driver per se?
I mean,
However you want to put it.
he might race in some category. They have not given out his plan yet, but
WEC.
Yeah, like, but yeah,
Maybe.
uh, I think, I mean, I would have liked, obviously, I would have liked Oscar Piastri to be in that seat. But Guan Yu Zhou obviously is a good driver himself. He's not a bad driver. He is P2 in the Formula 2 Championship currently, so that speaks volumes. And I think obviously the money and the sponsorship he brings in is of great value for Formula One, and Formula One themselves must have pushed Alpine and Alfa Romeo to get Guanyu in that seat. But I think that it brings up that question of a second race in China. I heard that somewhere, and
Yeah.
obviously that would bring in a lot of interest and money. Now I don't like that idea. What about you?
About a second race in China.
Yeah, second race in China, and the whole Guangzhou project.
Um, I mean, F1 has tried it before and failed. So it all really rests on Guan Yu Zhou's shoulders on how well he performs in the Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
But F1 trying to expand its horizons in China, I just feel like the whole obviously I'm not the one there, so I don't know what all is going on, right? I don't know what are the different avenues or what are the different goals that F1 has. But from an outsider's perspective, the whole operation that F1 is currently running in terms of developing interest across the world seems a bit haphazard and a bit mismanaged in a way. Because if you really want, because on one side they're trying to expand in the US, right? There was chat about having 3 races in the
Three
US, which in
races,
my
yeah.
opinion is a bit too much. I think 2 is just the sweet spot. But they went a different way with that. They're going the content way with that, where they're more involved with creating content that is US based, whereas they're not going the driver route with the US people. And even though there is technically an American team on the grid, I don't think a lot of American F1 fans really identify with that particular team in the way that F1 might have wanted them to identify. So the marketing regarding that is also a little bit weird. And then now they're trying to push a second race in China with Guan Yu Zhou, when we haven't even been to a race in China in the last 2 years,
Yeah.
right? So it's a bit weird. I What do I think about a second race in China? I think 25 races is too much, and we should visit as many places as possible, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In a And and you'll say, okay, why are you okay with 2 races in the US, if not 2 races in the China? What's the difference there? They're just as big countries. China is even bigger than the US. There's more people and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But if you ask me, I'd rather have a rotational calendar in the US if there are multiple tracks than go twice to the US too. So I fall in that category. But there is definitely a market, and F1 is a business at the end of the day. So I'm not surprised that they wanna they want to make more money. They want to expand their fan base in China too. But yeah, what can you do about it? At the end of the day, like, money speaks, and that is what we've seen so far. But again, F1 says that they want to expand into new markets, but then we end up going to Middle East, which is why, like I said, like I started with the fact that now we have like 4 or 5 races in the Middle East, which is why I started with the whole fact, right? They're trying to expand their operations in regions that haven't had operations before, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, you would want to expand your operations in regions with a higher, I guess, like, kind of population density, or like, where there's higher chance of success there's a lot more people there who are trying to absorb your content, what you're trying to offer. Whereas in Middle East, there's just not enough as many people. Not a lot of international fans might want to fly out to Middle East because of the various issues that are going on out there and things like that. So again, money speaks, and the whole operation seems a bit. Yes, F1 is expanding, and that is great. We are getting more races, but we are running a risk of dilution and whatnot. And we've talked about that over and over again, right? What happens with multiple races?
Yeah.
So like I
Yeah,
said, it's just
absolutely.
though I can rant about it, over and over again, but the whole operation seems a bit mismanaged, and hopefully, Liberty Media has done a good job so far. And when Stefano Domenicali stepped in, we all thought this was going to be great because Stefano and Ross Brawn, the dream team is working together basically, with John Todd and whoever.
Yeah.
But it just seems a little bit too spread out and a little too mismanaged in my opinion. But I'm just an outsider, and I'm not the smartest person about I'm not the one people come to for business advice, so I might be completely wrong. So maybe we should get someone else on the podcast and get their view on it, who's had an inside look into F1's business side of things. But yeah, that's for the off season, I guess. Enough of a rant. Obviously, nothing to talk about Haas, so we're gonna just let that be. Except the fact that Mick almost took out our favorite Fernando Alonso. This sorry, I'm just burping on the mic. But Mick almost took out Fernando Alonso in his run to P3. How do you feel about that? Love lost for Mick?
Oh no, not love lost for Mick, but yeah, that was a real heart in the mouth moment for me. That was scary.
But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, for a moment I thought it was, Nikita Mazepin just waving around the track.
Oh,
But
man. I mean, okay, it's fine. I'm not gonna say anything. Maybe offline. But
yeah.
yeah. So do you think Oscar Piastri, the Alpine team will ask Oscar Piastri to finish like give up his P1 in the F2 championship to Guan Yu Zhou?
That's interesting.
I don't think they'll do that. It's
I
like
don't.
really
Yeah, I
bad.
don't
But
think they'll
it's,
do
it's just
that.
it's the same question. Like would like if Perez was leading in Mexico, would he
Yeah.
give up the win
Yeah.
for Max? It's
No,
not the same, but it's kind of
but it's
similar, I
it's on the
guess.
similar lines. But I think Oscar, even if they ask him, I don't think he will, because he has he has won 2 championships on the trot in his rookie season. He's on course to win the third championship on the trot in his rookie season, and
And I think Tomo did a comparison video where he talks about Guan Yu Zhou, Nicholas Latifi, and Nikita Mazepin's careers, and that Guan Yu Zhou has had a slightly better career than the two other, I guess, young paid drivers on the F1 grid right now. But his career hasn't been anything like um, stellar or extraordinary in any way for us to be too excited about him. But at the same time, he's shown a good amount of talent, and you just don't finish P2 in a packed F2 grid over the course of a season by sheer luck.
yeah,
Obviously, you
absolutely.
need a lot of talent,
I mean,
even
yeah,
if it's your third season.
Guan Yu Zhou is. I mean, everyone would agree that Guan Yu Zhou is no superstar like Charles Leclerc was in Formula Two.
It
But
doesn't seem like he's the same as a generational talent, at least in
yeah,
terms of
exactly.
success, like we've seen
But then
Lando, George,
again,
and Charles.
but then again, like Alex Albon, he finished P2 in the championship in Formula
Yeah,
2, I think, and even finishing P2 even after 3 years in Formula 2 is a great success in itself. So
yeah, and we've seen other drivers who haven't been extraordinarily successful in the junior categories, but they've done well in Formula One.
yeah,
And we've seen drivers who've had not a roller coaster, but a very up and down. It depends, every time they move to a new team, or they're new to the championship, they have a tough time, but they adapt and they need a couple of years. Even Mick himself, he didn't have a great first season, and you wouldn't call him exactly a generational talent,
yeah,
but he did end up winning a championship, which is why people don't scrutinize his performances as much as they might scrutinize Guan Yu's performance next year, especially in lieu of the fact that Oscar Piastri is not getting that seat, which a lot of people wanted to see.
yeah, absolutely. But I mean,
But yeah, I hope something good comes out of Guan Yu Zhou joining the grid, unlike a lot of the other things that F1 has tried in the past.
yeah, absolutely. But see, the thing is, it's a completely new lineup, a driven lineup for Alfa Romeo, and a new era of cars. So I think we always say we can hope for the best, but I think from where Alfa Romeo is right now, it's only upwards for them. They like they
Hopefully,
can't.
they've been in the same place for like forever.
Yeah, but I don't think they can fall any lower. That was my yeah.
That's what people thought about Williams, and see what happened.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
But yeah, talking just one more point before we move on to the last thing. Talking about Guan Yu Zhou reminded me. Did you see the sly message that was given to Pierre Gasly to let Max Verstappen through on the opening lap?
No, I missed that.
Oh, you should go and see that again. It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
Okay.
But yeah, it was pretty good. But yeah, that's all from my side regarding this weekend, Vedant. Obviously, not only is the F1 Championship coming to an end in 3 weeks' time, we'll also see the F2 Championship coming to an end in Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi with the last 6 races there, supporting the F1's calendar during the last 2 races. So we'll also preview that in our next preview podcast next
Yeah.
week. But that's really all from my side. Anything from you, Vedant, about this weekend and anything else?
Oh well, this triple header has been quite exciting. You know, just concluding
I
thoughts.
mean, they could race again in Saudi Arabia next week if they wanted. It's like literally right there.
Yeah. So, but well, a 1 week gap for all the teams, and just that final push remains. So hopefully Red Bull can fight Mercedes better, because if they can't, I think Mercedes will have. Wait, sorry, I am not saying anything right now. I am going to keep my mouth shut.
You're not gonna jinx anything,
Yeah,
Vedant. Shut up.
but
Just say it. You're not gonna jinx anything. Just say it.
but well, anyway, it will be
Oh
an
my god.
exciting end of the season in Formula One.
Yup, it will be. And in other news, Sebastian Ogier and Julian Gracia took their 8th WRC championship in 9 seasons. It was their final season, like they said at the very start of the season. Just one short of Sebastian Loeb's record of 9 WRC championships, though. A lot of Michael Schumacher fans would say that, Lewis Hamilton should learn a thing or two from Sebastian Ogier.
No, but yeah, that. Well, I think, I mean, Sebastian Loeb was a hero of sorts for Ogier, right? A mentor of sorts. They were both Frenchmen, and it was like a Sebastian Vettel and Michael Schumacher relationship of sorts. So I don't know.
But yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's it. That's all from our side this weekend. It's been a tiring weekend. So yeah, if you hear us, if you have heard us for 45 minutes and we sound tired, it is because we're really tired. But there's been a lot going on otherwise. But yeah, thank you for joining us once again, and thank you Vedant for joining me once again and talking about F1. Looking forward to next week to previewing races for the last time this year. So really pumped for that. Even if my voice doesn't exactly convey that. But yeah, looking forward to the last 3 weekends of F1 racing this year. Looking forward to sharing it with you. Thank you so much once again, and we'll catch you on the next one.